Hello, Southern California, and welcome to this week's edition of Right on the Money. I'm your host, Kristin Oakley, and I'm joined in the studio by Tom Mosley. He is the founder and president of Mosley Wealth Management. Tom, my friend, it's always a great day to be with you. I look forward to this time each and every week. How are you?
I am doing great. Always a joy to have a show with you.
Well, thank you so much. And I know you've been super busy. A lot of folks have been calling in, especially after last week's episode where we dove deeply into taxes. You've been getting a lot of calls. A lot of your advisors are really busy meeting with people. But I recognize that a lot of viewers might be newer to you and to the show and to Mosley Wealth Management. So I would love for us to start off today's show by you sharing a little bit more about your story. I never get sick of hearing it. It's a beautiful story of how you got into this business and really what motivates you to do what you do day in and day out.
You know, it's one of the stories, Kristin, that when I tell either in an event or when I tell on a television show, people resonate with it because in 1995, I had first gotten into this industry. I got my licensing on June the 8th of 1995, a day that will live in infamy, okay? And I sat down with the investment side manager and the insurance side manager at a little company, a little MetLife company in downtown Pasadena at the corner of Lake and Colorado. And the most important thing about that office was one day a year, the Rose Bowl parade came right down Colorado Boulevard, and we got to go see the Rose Bowl parade from the top. They put shelves or stands up there, and we got to see it.
How fun.
But those guys were asking me, they said, Tom, who do you want to work with? I mean, the first day, where are we headed? And I had been in the ministry for almost 2 decades, and in the course of being in the ministry, I had been put in charge of benevolence at some of the churches where I had worked. And I had had people come in and they were literally trying to decide to buy food or buy medicine because they couldn't afford both. And they were older, they weren't working still, retired. And so I looked at those guys and I said, I want to work with retirees to make sure they never run out of money the rest of their life. Kristin, you would have thought I had said something in some way foreign language that might have been offensive because they were looking at me like, really? Really?
Because when they asked you that question, they were wondering, you know, what kind of professional do you want to work with?
They were wanting to, do I want to work with doctors or lawyers or engineers, you know, or whatever, you know? And retirees, you say, well, wait a minute, I get something in my mailbox every single day. I can see it all over my Facebook. I get inundated with opportunities to go to a dinner seminar and a maximization Social Security seminar and all these other things. It's because in 1995, 28 years ago, if you'll run the clock back, the oldest edge of baby boomers were turning 50 that year. And everybody and their brother who was in this industry wasn't a, quote, retirement expert. Because retirement is entirely different than pre-retirement. In pre-retirement, we've talked about it on recent shows, you build your lump sum. In retirement, it's your income. We use the big word accumulation. You're trying to make money and grow money in pre-retirement. When you get to retirement, you're trying to preserve money and to make it last. If it was a football team, you are playing offense when you're in the accumulation phase, trying to score as many points as you can. When you are in the retirement phase, you're playing defense. You're trying to keep the losses from hitting and the losing of a point advantage. And so, you know, you got to understand, and I always like to use this illustration to show the difference in somebody who's really working with you just to accumulate, like most of the people who are out there, and they're good at it because you put your money in the market and 40 years later it's grown. Okay, it's pretty easy. The market runs in their direction. When the market goes down when you're 30 years old and it goes down 50%, like 2 times it's done since the year 2000, then you're buying twice as much when you're buying in.
Right.
But when you're preserving that money, you're playing defense, okay? Get the illustrations here, and you're taking money out. You're taking out twice as much when the market is down. So I told him, I said, I want to work at it from a standpoint, and at first I said, I just want to make sure they don't run out of money. And then I realized over a period of shortly, 2 or 3 years, that the biggest thing that was taking your money away from you in retirement is taxes. Because if you've got $1 million in a 401k, it's not all your money. So taking that money away and spending that money, it's got to go through the U.S. tax system. They have to take their piece first, and then you get to take it and you get what's left to spend for your money. So we said we exist as a firm to make sure people don't run out of income the rest of their life, and they pay as little as they're legally required to pay in taxes. No cheating. That's called a penitentiary plan.
Right.
We don't run that plan,
No.
okay? But you need to realize that, and so many people, Kristin, this is my heartbreak. So many people don't make that transition, and they don't realize that it's different when I'm in retirement because they're still chasing shiny objects. They're still coming in, what's the hottest thing going? They want to know what the best investment was, and if you'll track it, most of the time the best investment last year ain't the best investment for this year. They go up, they come down, they're all over the place. So you need a more sound written financial plan when you get to retirement.
For sure. I love this story so much, Tom. And to your point, 28 years ago, the reason that this was so novel was there hadn't been a generation that had been living as long as we are now. With the baby boomers, there's so many more people, but also it used to be people maybe worked till age 62, but were passing away as early as age 65. There wasn't this continued possibly 30-year lifespan beyond retirement that people had to account for, and that's why it's so critical to make sure that your money's going to last, because we are living longer than we ever have before.
Exactly, and the first foundational truth of a blueprint is where's your income coming from?
Right.
And 28 years ago, far more people still had pensions because they hadn't changed the rules. They had only changed the rules 17 years earlier when they came out with, in 1978, and they started the 401k, and we were all excited we would get a 401k and a pension. And over a period of time, it became just the 401k and not very many pensions. I ask in my seminars, and by the way, you can go to MosleyWealthManagement.com. Make sure and put in the .com. If you just put Mosley Wealth Management, there are people who try to steal away our marketing.
It's
so
being
you might
pirated, right? As we said on a previous show.
That's right. That's right. I like steal, but you can use pirating, okay? But go to MosleyWealthManagement.com. Look at our seminars. Come to our seminars. We always ask, do you have a pension? And sometimes 1/3 to half of the people who are 55, 60, 65 years old still have a pension.
Right.
But then I turn around and I ask them, how many of your children have a pension? It's not uncommon for only 1 or 2 hands to go up. Usually school teachers. I've got 2 daughters who are school teachers. So the rules have changed in that we don't have that guaranteed flow of income that comes from our companies anymore like we did a generation ago, or particularly 2 generations ago. So the rules have changed. You need a retirement blueprint that's going to reach out and touch on, for sure, income and make sure that you know where your money's coming from in retirement.
Absolutely. Well, Tom, thank you so much. I know we have so much more to get into, but before we get to the rest of our discussion on making this important shift from the accumulation years into retirement, we are going to take a quick break, and this is an excellent opportunity for you to call that number on the bottom of your screen to receive your very own complimentary retirement blueprint from Tom and the team at Mosley Wealth Management. That number to call is 866-709-1462. You're also welcome to take out your smartphone. Simply open up that camera app. You can point, click, and scan that QR code down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. That will take you over to a landing page, ask you a few short, simple questions, and then a member of the team from Mosley Wealth Management will reach out and connect with you to schedule your complimentary meeting that way as well. More on today's episode when we come back.
Fiduciary is a big word in our industry, and fiduciary means you act in a client's best interest. At Mosley Wealth Management, you are an individual. You're different than anybody else on this planet. You look different. You've got a different social security number. You live at a different address. Everything about you is different. The first visit is just getting to know them, getting to know where they are. We literally start with a blank legal pad, and at the end of that meeting we just say, okay, you've brought a lot of stuff here. Do you want us to look at this stuff and see what we would recommend? And when I look at statements that people bring me from so-called fiduciaries, and I ask them, I say, why did you get put 50% in this and 50% in this? Many times they'll say, well, that's what the advisor said he likes to do. My question is, would I do this for my mom? Would I do this for my dad? Would I do this for myself? So you really have to sit back sometimes and say, if I were them, if I were sitting on their side of the table, what would I do? And I've literally sat in my office at least once every 2 or 3 weeks and try to put together a case for somebody where it's iffy as to whether they'll make it or not. And you have to ask yourself, what would I do if I were in their situation? And never, ever recommend something that you wouldn't do if you were right where they are.
Welcome back, Southern California. You're watching Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. I'm your host, Kristin Oakley, and we are talking today about the important shift that has to happen from your working years into retirement. And Tom, obviously, one of the biggest challenges that folks aren't always aware of that they need to navigate is their current level of risk with what you are currently invested in and how that probably needs to shift and change as you are approaching and entering retirement. So let's talk about that.
Well, you know, every investment that you make, if it's in the stock market or almost anything, you'll sign a sheet that says, I understand that I have the possibility of losing my investment. We don't make a big deal about that because the stock market has historically gained over a period of time.
Right.
But that becomes even more crucial if I have children who are 27, 31, 34, 46, and 47, okay? And I tell them, even at all of those ages, put your money into something that's good and solid in the market and let it grow, because you have a 4-letter word that starts with T and ends with IME. You have time on your hands.
Right.
And Kristin, if the market goes down and I'm 35 years old, I've got time to recover because I've got a job.
Right.
Okay, and I can recover from any kind of loss that comes back. Plus, if I just leave it in there and given time, then, because I'm not taking out, in fact, like we said earlier, you're buying into it, so you're still going to grow over a period of time.
And during those downturns, what's cool is you're actually buying them when they're on sale, right? That's how you buy low, but you have the time then to make up for that loss.
In the last 2 years, the stock market, over a general period of time, 25 months, I did this about a week or so ago, the Dow Jones is down 1% over 2 years, 25 months. The S&P 500 was the exact same that it was on October 1st of 2021. And the NASDAQ is down around 9% over that time period. I have had people who were younger calling me up and saying, is this a good time to get out of the 401k because my money is losing money? No way. If you're going to buy something and the price of it is down and it's going to be a long-term investment, when the price is down, that's the time to buy. Flip it to what we talked about earlier, though. If you're in retirement and you haven't made that switch and all of your money is still left in the market, just out there hoping that the market will continue to grow up, to your point, people are taking more out and buying out more units. On the flip side, they're taking out more units, and you're destroying your retirement portfolio faster and faster and faster. So the key thing, and I'm going to use a 4-letter word here, is risk. You need to know the risk that you're taking. And again, to your point, you're so good with what you say and thinking through this. And I like the fact that you're not just a host, but you're a financial educator. You understand this market. When you're there, that risk level it's important that you know. When you're 25, take some good risk. I mean, when a 25-year-old, I've even told my 31-year-old son, yeah, buy a little bit of Bitcoin. But I've had people who've walked in and they're 72 years old and they've got 90% of their money in Bitcoin. Now, it goes up, it comes down. Whenever you're watching this, it may be up, it may be down. Just keep watching it. It'll go up or it'll go down. And you can't have that kind of volatility, or you shouldn't have, in most cases, that kind of volatility when you're in retirement. So you need to know your risk score. And actually, let me change that. You need to know your risk scores, because there's two key scores you need to know.
Yes, talk about that, because a lot of people are just familiar with the risk tolerance score, which is one of them, but get into the second one as well. This is going to be good.
Well, even so many times, Kristin, when people come into us, they don't know a score. They say, I told my guy to put me in something that was conservative. Or I told my lady that's working with me to put me in something that was moderate or in the middle. But what does moderate mean? What does balanced mean?
Those are hard to define because it's such an individualized thing.
Right, and it's up to you as to what your definition of that is. We use a risk score like you said, that's actually 0 to 100. As risky as the market or no risk whatsoever. Yeah, there are products we use with our clients when they're very, very conservative that has 3, 4, 5, 6% growth, not just in big interest rate years like we are in right now, but consistently over a period of time, and there's no risk to it. And we also have options that are still in the market that are as risky. I recently had a guy came in, he did a risk analysis, and I'm going to do this. His risk score internally was 95, and he was retiring. Okay? One thing, he had a big pension, he had tons of income, so he really wanted that money to grow.
Right.
You may not be that way. You may be saying, I don't have that much money. I can't start my fireplace with $100 bills. I've got to be more conservative here. And so you may not want to take a 95 out of 100 risk score. But see, that's where you need to know your risk score. Here's the flip side. People don't know the risk score that their portfolio is running, because all of those investments that you have at the big box firms, let me tell you what's happened over a period of years. For 13 years until about a couple of years ago, 2022 was down 22%. Okay, we had a little bit of an adjustment. But for 13 years, everything was going up. Forget 2022, you're still in that frame of mind that everything should be going up. Everything should be good. So you go in, you talk to your broker and you say, hey, I'm golfing with my buddy Bob, and he's getting 3 or 4% more than I'm getting. Well, your broker looks at you and he knows that he's going to keep your business 3 or 4 years, and you're going to go to somebody else because all you're in is a running to make money. And if I quit making money, you're going to walk away because there's no planning. There's just making money. So your broker says, well, I can do that. I can. And what they're doing is they're raising risk scores and raising risk scores to get the potential return, counting on the market to do well. Let me go back and say something. We've had a 13-year run-up. If you look at a long-term spectrum of the economy, you realize that, yes, we had a 22% downturn last year, but it might not be over. With the interest rates the way they are right now, with inflation the way it is right now, with the housing market beginning to diminish, with yellow freight just closing, leaving 200,000 people without a pension. You know, those kind of things are happening in our society. And by the way, there's not gonna be an announcement in the newspaper, beware, from this point on we're entering a really deep recession. They keep saying we should be getting a recession. We should be getting a recession. It's going to come.
They've been saying that for a long time now, and no one has a crystal ball, but all signs are pointing to it will happen at some point.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're so right, Kristen. It will happen at some point. Well, when you're 25 years old, recession, market goes down, keep buying. When you're 65 or 70 years old, you're taking that risk level. I've had people come in that have told their broker to be very, very, very conservative. This lady, 3 times, 79-year-old lady, said, I told them to be very, very, very conservative. She came in with a risk score on her portfolio of 85.
Wow.
We did her portfolio, her risk score, and it came in at 23. Oh. That's not a matchup. No. She likes what she's getting when the market is blowing the top out, but she's not going to like what she's getting when the market takes its eventual downturn. And in retirement, you got to ask yourself this question. If I'm taking too much risk, where am I going to go back to work to recover if I lose what I've got because I've got a hope strategy rather than really a plan? You see, what we do is we think income is important. Where's that coming from? Inflation is important. But the third step of building a retirement blueprint for everybody who responds on this show is we go into your investments and we match up your risk level with your portfolio risk level to make sure you can sleep at night, to make sure that you have that sleep well at night feeling, so that a friend of mine, a friend of yours, Dave Bach, says in his writings 13 times, he's written a New York Times bestsellers, and Kristin and I both know him personally, and he always says, no investment is worth losing sleep over. You need to have in retirement a boring portfolio. Some of you are sitting there and you don't have a boring portfolio. And you're one recession away from losing 50% of what you're living off of in retirement. The way to get around that, at least to know, is come in, talk to one of us. I was just meeting last week with one of our people who responded in our new Arcadia office. We're in Arcadia, Glendale, Ontario, Anaheim, Scripps Ranch. Come in and meet with us. We'll tell you your risk scores. We'll tell you your portfolio risk score. We'll show you what percentage it might go down if we have another downturn like we had in 2008. I had a client there in Arcadia. They were potentially suffering, Kristin, a 47% downturn if we had a similar recession.
Wow.
And they said, I can't afford to do that. I've got to make a change.
Right. So important, so powerful to know this information, and I appreciate you sharing all this with us, Tom. The reality is, I think a lot of in our industry tries to do this cookie cutter approach. Are you conservative? Are you moderate? Are you aggressive? But we are not cookies to be cut. This is a very individualized, personalized thing, and you need to know what your risk tolerance is. And then, as Tom has so eloquently stated, you also need to know how much risk you are currently taking, and can you afford to be taking that for when a recession comes. So we encourage you, call the number on the bottom of your screen, 866-709-1462, to get your very own complimentary risk analysis as part of your complimentary retirement blueprint. Again, you're also welcome to scan that QR code down in the bottom right-hand corner, and that will get you connected as well. More with Right on the Money right after this.
The work never seems to end until the day it finally does. After nearly a lifetime on the job, you should be rewarded for all the time you spent working. Whether that's crossing off items on your bucket list, learning a new passion, or rekindling the love of an old one. After all, life isn't over when you stop working. It's the start of an all-new chapter. The one where you're the writer and you get to choose how your story will go. A way to achieve that is by having a clear financial plan to sustain your golden years. The biggest fear most retirees have is if they'll have enough money to maintain the lifestyle they've always enjoyed. Having a plan to help protect you against the curveballs life often throws will help to maintain your lifestyle. Call today to get your free written financial plan so you may live every day to the fullest and enjoy the retirement of your dreams.
Welcome back to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. I'm your host, Kristin Oakley, and a very important conversation we're having on today's show about risk. Do you know what your risk tolerance is? Do you know how much risk you are currently taking with your investments? And, I heard you laugh earlier when I said that we are not cookies to be cut, but so much of our financial industry does treat it like a cookie cutter approach, but that's the antithesis of what you are doing for folks with all areas of their financial life. It's a very individualized, personalized thing. It's a customized retirement blueprint. I know we've joked, you can't call in and say, Tom, can you send me my own retirement blueprint?
We have that, Kristin.
And I know people have done that, right?
Right, just send it to me. I'll just read it, send it to me.
Right, but that's not how it works, because you have to take into account all these personal factors in your life, and so you can't put together that plan until you get to know someone and understand their unique situation. So this whole risk conversation, again, the big corporate firms often are doing folks a lot of disservice because that shift is not being made. They are accumulation specialists. They're helping people grow and accumulate that wealth during their working years. But that distribution phase needs to be treated so differently, and obviously the risk tolerance needs to come into play with that shift.
Most of the conventional wisdom for decades has been a stock bond match, okay? And by that I mean, when you're, like I've talked about some of my children who are in their 20s and 30s and 40s, have 90% in stock, have 10% in bonds. That's always been that's out there. That's the word on the street. And as you get older, well, let's go to a 70-30, 70% in stock. You still get the growth, and 30% in bonds. And you get a little bit older, or you express, hey, I'm not excited over taking that much risk. No problem. We'll just do 60% in stock, or a 50-50 mix I've seen sometime with stocks and bonds. Well, I got to stop the clock and ask you to look back to 2022. How did that work for you?
Yeah.
Because you'll see that stocks were down over 20% and bonds were down over 20% in 2022. So it doesn't work.
That was such a rude wake-up call for so many people because they thought they were invested more conservatively, but yet they still had these large losses.
Exactly, and there are reports. You can Google these reports. I can give them to you if you come in to meet with us, and our guys can too, and our people that you meet with can too. But there have been reports in Kiplinger. There have been reports in USA Today. Jeremy Siegel, who's the chief economist at the Wharton School of Business. All of those people have come out recently and said, you know, we've done some analysis, and it makes more sense to put, this is even before some of these got to be really, really good products because of the interest rates.
Right.
It makes more sense for you to consider a fixed indexed annuity for your bond portfolio because it's guaranteed not to go down. And we can't trust the fact anymore that when stocks are up, bonds are down, and when stocks go down, bonds go up. So you can't play the same game. Again, we've talked about this on previous shows. The rules get changed.
Yeah.
The rules get changed. So you can't just be playing with somebody who gives that cookie cutter, like you said, that pull it off the shelf and send it to you. That's nothing of what we do. Your risk level and your portfolio need to be considered. Now, for those of you, I have to add this right here at the end. There's some of you who are sitting out and saying, you know, I'd really like to work with somebody like that, but I'm 10 years from retirement or 12 years from retirement. I used to coach football. And we never showed up at 7 o'clock on Friday night, Kristin, and said, okay, who's here to play football tonight?
Right.
Okay,
what are we
you
gonna
go
do?
to tight end. Yeah, you go to, you know, we never did that. We started actually a couple of weeks earlier with scouting, but that Saturday before we played on Friday, after we were just tired from the game before, we started putting together a plan. Some of you are sitting out there and you're 52 years old and you need some direction in your 401k. Now, I can't manage your 401k, but I can give you some advice as to if the market's going up, what do we do with the 401k? If it's down, what do we do to mitigate your risk level when you get in that retirement red zone right before you're about to retire? How do we do this? You come in, you meet with us, and we're able to sit down. We can give you 401k coaching, but we will be able to start building a retirement blueprint that addresses this. And you call in, you need to say, I want a retirement blueprint, but you also need to say, I want to know what my risk score is, and I want to know what my portfolio risk score is.
Absolutely. Tom, thank you so much. Such an important conversation. The reality is it's so important to know these things because if you get hit with a massive loss right when you're trying to retire, you will not be able to recover from that, and we want to prevent that happening to you. So we encourage you, pick up the phone, call this number on the bottom of your screen, 866-709-1462 to get your own complimentary retirement blueprint from the team of Mosley Wealth Management. We appreciate you watching. We love you, Southern California. Be safe, be happy, be blessed, and we look forward to being back with you next week.